Hey, what is up, everybody? I am here to give you guys a new series that I'm going to be starting on this YouTube channel, and it's called Flashback Fridays. This is going to be Season 1, Episode 1, and this is the series slash season premiere since, any episode, anytime you do the first episode ever of anything, that's normally the series premiere, and then obviously season premiere, because if it's the first episode of the season, it's normally considered the season premiere. I'll probably just call this the series premiere, but whatever. Um, now, pretty much what this show is going to be is if you ever watch the Retro Wrestling Review series on this channel, and if you haven't, click it down on the playlist down in the description box below, and check that out. And yeah, but pretty much, this is pretty much going to be the same format. It's pretty much the exact same thing, except it's just a different show now. But if you haven't seen the Retro Wrestling Review series, pretty much what that is I would go back and I would review past professional wrestling shows and kind of, review the shows, and I would review the match. But I wouldn't just review the match. I would talk about the background going into the match, about why the match was taking place. And then after I reviewed the match, I would talk about the aftermath and where each superstar from that match went and where how that show was important to the company. I would pretty much go all balls in and reviewing that show. And, I had fun doing that show. And pretty much, though, now I want to make sure you guys know that this is going to pretty much take the spot of the Retro Wrestling Review series. But under no circumstances is the Retro Wrestling Review series going to be going away. It's just going to be on a little bit of a hiatus because we're working through that. I'm working on revamping that show. It's going to be completely different, and that show will come back in September. But I figured I would do this show because the reason is WWE Network released on their collection last week a series called Flashback Fridays, which pretty much has all the past wrestling shows in there, and it's obviously under like a certain topic, and I figured every Friday I would come on here and review one of those shows. Now I'm not going to go through the entire shows that are in the collections in this video because, quite frankly, the video would just be too long. So I'm just going to break this up into certain seasons, and this season pretty much is going to be the history behind D-Generation X, because that's pretty much what this collection is based off of right now. And every show it has something to do with D-Generation X, and I will explain what D-Generation X is as I review the show. If you don't know who D-Generation X is, it was a faction back in the Attitude Era that was supposed to be a nice, funny comedy faction. They would do off the wall things like do strip poker. They would strip off their clothes, and they were just a funny stable. It consisted of Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and then other members would be X-Pac, the New Age Outlaws, which is who's in there, China. There was a ton of people in D-Generation X. Pretty much what this first season is going to be is kind of going through the history of D-Generation X, how it got started, and all that good stuff. And I'm going to come up and pretty much what this first season is going to be all pretty much based around D-Generation X. There's going to be other stuff I'm going to talk about in this video because there's other past wrestling stuff to go over. But pretty much that's what this season consists of. I'm looking forward to doing this because normally whenever I do the Retro Wrestling Review series, I would keep it based under one topic. Like I would only review one part of the show and go over the history of it. Like, for example, when I did Battleground, NXT, the NXT specials, Payback. So this is going to be different, and I'm actually looking forward to doing this. The difference is I won't be doing this every day like I was. I'm only going to be doing this on Fridays because, quite frankly, it's called Flashback Fridays for a reason. So I'm only going to be doing this every Friday, and I'm obviously going to review all the shows that are in this series. So I'm really looking forward to doing this. And now that I've kind of gone through this intro, let's get into the actual show that I'm going to be reviewing in this first episode. All right, so the now let's get to the show actual review. So the show that I'm going to be reviewing is going to be WWF Monday Night Raw from August 11th, 1997. Um, Pretty much, yes, I'm going to be reviewing WWF Monday Night Raw from 1997. This is a pretty historic show. I won't really get into why yet. I'll explain it as I review this episode. But obviously WWF was kind of in a bad time around 1997. They were losing the ratings war with WCW because WCW had launched out the NWO and Hulk Hogan had just turned heel, and WCW was just destroying WWF and ratings. This was kind of like a little bit of the start of the Monday Night Wars, but the WWF was struggling to really beat WCW in the ratings war. So WWF was in a pretty bad state around this time. However, WWF was kind of starting to get things right. In 1996 they had a really bad year, but then they finally started to make because WCW was kicking their ass so much. WWF finally started to make a comeback. They were kind of slowly entering the Attitude Era. Obviously they had the stuff that happened at WrestleMania 13 with Bret the Hitman Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin, where you had Stone Cold Steve Austin slowly becoming a rising star, and they did that double turn where Bret Hart turned heel, Stone Cold Steve Austin turned face, and WWF was being a little bit more edgy, taking more chances, but it didn't fully start to happen at this time, so I don't really know what to expect going into the show. So I'm gonna have to wait and see. Let me go over the matches on this show. I have it on a website that doesn't really reveal, um, you know, too much of the results or anything. Um, but this show takes place at um, Philo Oxy, I don't know how to say that word, Minnesota, in the Gulf Coast Coliseum. And just so that way everybody knows, the current WWF champions were world champion Bret the Hitman Hart. He won his championship on August 3rd, 1997 at SummerSlam that year. The Intercontinental champion was Stone Cold Steve Austin. He won his belt also at SummerSlam that year. You had the European champion Davey Boy Smith. He won his belt on March 3rd, 1997. I believe he was the inaugural champion. He had won the tournament to become the first ever European champion. And the World Tag Team Champions were Stone Cold Steve Austin and Dude Love. They won their belts on July 14th, 1997. I don't remember exactly how they won their titles, so I couldn't really tell you. Now let me go through like what the matches are going to be on the show. I won't say what the matches are, but I'll just kind of go through them briefly. We have a country whipping match. We have a match between Scott Hutsky and Tony Williams. I don't remember exactly who they are. We have a match between Brian Pillman and Flash Funk. And then we have a tag team match. And then we have a match between Farouk and Chains. And then we have the main event. It's going to be it's a no disqualification match. So if you actually look at the card looks pretty decent. But we're going to have to wait and see about how the show goes. So overall, now that I've kind of gone through like the matches and kind of talked about a little bit of the history behind this show, let me start by actually reviewing the show itself. Okay, so we had the actual start of the show. Obviously the intro is going to be different, but it just shows like the World Wrestling Federation, a little bit of a generic intro video, but I thought it worked. And it kind of talks about the background, how Bret the Hitman Hart, at SummerSlam won the WWF Championship, and he declared himself the new sheriff in town since he was the guy holding the WWF Championship. But since Shawn Michaels was the special guest referee, um, people thought that him and Bret Hart were in cahoots since he screwed the Undertaker out of the title and helped Bret Hart win the WWF Championship. So people thought that him and Shawn Michaels, that Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels were in cahoots. But Shawn Michaels says that you must be a stupid son of a bitch. It's not the case at all. And he says that he claims that he's the new sheriff in town. He's the one that's running things. But then we find out that none of them were the new sheriff in town because Sergeant Slaughter became the commissioner of WWF Monday Night Raw. And he was the one that was the sheriff in town. Obviously, it was kind of cool to have Sergeant Slaughter have a little bit of a role. And then, because battle lines were drawn, Stone Cold Steve Austin was going into a feud with Brian Pillman, and he was still kind of feuded with Bret Hart a little bit. You had Shawn Michaels, who wanted to, they were slowly building to the rematch at Survivor Series with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels in Bret Hart's hometown. And, obviously you had Bret Hart and Undertaker being slowly built up. You had all these factions that wanted to get at each other, Nation of Domination, and I don't remember the name of the faction, but the faction that Change was in, I remember it. I don't remember exactly what the name of the faction was. I think it's like the Aces of Spades or something. So it was just a chaotic time for Sergeant Slaughter to become the commissioner. And I liked the purpose here. I kind of liked how they had several feuds set up, and they were slowly building up to certain matches. So I thought this worked. Okay, so next, the cameraman is trying to get a word with Shawn Michaels. I'm gonna lose so much money because every time you mention Shawn Michaels' name, you have to give him $100. But anyhow, he just tells the cameraman to get out of his face, being a huge asshole. And this is probably the way he was in real life backstage, because everybody knows that Shawn Michaels was a huge asshole backstage, and they embraced it. He was actually being an asshole heel. So yeah, it was fine. All right, so then continuing with the show, we had Jim Ross, Vince McMahon, and Jerry the King Lawler on commentary for this show. That's actually a really great commentary team right there. Obviously, you had Jim Ross, who eventually became the voice of the Attitude Era and is probably the greatest commentator ever. Obviously, he's had some bad moments with WWE where they've gone on to embarrass him and stuff, but he's back commentating now with WWE, and that's awesome. Yeah, Vince McMahon, who it became around this time, it was very well known that he was the owner of the WWF. No one had really known. They finally made it known at this time. I actually originally thought that it really wasn't known until Survivor Series 1997, but I guess it was slow. They just let it out. I don't know exactly then when it became known. And then Jerry the King Lawler, he was wrestling for years in Memphis wrestling, and then eventually he debuted like in 94, 93-ish, and then he was a full active wrestler. Then he eventually became the heel commentator, and then eventually he switched to a baby face. He commentated actually for a while. He just recently stopped doing commentary this year, and he's not more on like a part-time basis. So Joey the King Lawler lasted a while in the company, and yeah, they have a great opening intro video showing Monday Night Raw, the Great Raw intro. I thought it was awesome. I'm not going to really explain it. Just look up WWE Monday Night Raw intro from 1997, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And the first thing that happens is Jim Ross interviews Shawn Michaels. Now, this was going to be Shawn Michaels' first match back in the WWF because obviously he ended up leaving because he, quote, lost his smile. But we know why. What the real reason was is that he left, so he vacated his WWF Championship just before WrestleMania 13, coincidentally when he was supposed to put over Bret the Hitman Hart, and Bret Hart was supposed to win the WWF Championship. So this was going to be his first. So this show was going to be his first actual match back in the WWF, and he cuts a promo and he talks about how tonight he's going to destroy mankind. He says that originally was made the special guest referee for the match between Bret the Hitman Hart and Undertaker at SummerSlam. I was told that if I didn't call the match down the middle and I got involved in any way, then I would never wrestle in the United States ever again. But nobody has the balls to fire me. He says that nobody told me, put on my lap firing papers. And he says that I've had more on my lap than the WWF has ever thrown at me, which I thought was awesome. And obviously, he makes jabs at Vince McMahon by saying that the owner was afraid of him, which I thought was great. And then he continues to go on to say that he's going to show mankind why he is the outlaw of the WWF. And then he moves on and starts talking about Sergeant Slaughter, and he warned Sergeant Slaughter not to stick his big chin right in his business because he's the outlaw of the WWF and he's Shawn Michaels. And I thought that was great. And then Sergeant Slaughter comes out and he says that since he's the commissioner, he says that he's not out here. Oh, and he also challenges Undertaker. He also talks about Undertaker too, actually, Shawn Michaels, and he says that tonight, if I can beat Mankind, who's defeated Taker before, I can show as hell beat the Undertaker. And he challenges the Undertaker to watch that match. And then Sergeant Slaughter comes out after that, and he calls out Slaughter. And Slaughter says that you don't have to worry about my big chin getting involved in your business because tonight you need to be worried about Mankind. And then he goes on to say that he's not doing this to get involved in Shawn Michaels' business. He's doing this to make the best matches and make the best decisions for the WWF. And then he says that then Shawn Michaels said, "All right, I understand. I hear you. I understand you loud and clear, just like a broken windshield because he was probably spitting in his face." And he keeps making a lot of chin puns at him, and he says that tonight he's going to lay out Mankind with sweet chin music. But he says that just in case you do have it out for me, I've hired an insurance policy, and that's going to be revealed later on tonight. And then that was it. Overall, I really enjoyed this opening segment. I thought this was a nice, good promo by Shawn Michaels, and I like the stuff they did with him and Sergeant Slaughter. And overall, I really enjoyed this opening segment. It was really good. All right, so next, fans get interviewed and give their predictions about who they think is going to win the match between Shawn Michaels and Mankind. A lot of the fans picked Shawn Michaels. The only one person I recall picked Mankind, and he said that Shawn Michaels, since he's returned, has become a piece of crap, and Mankind's going to destroy him. So it's kind of interesting because Shawn Michaels was supposed to be the heel, and a lot of people talk about how nowadays people always just root for whoever they want. It feels like it still happened back then because Shawn Michaels technically was supposed to be the heel, but yet everybody rooted for the heel Shawn Michaels over Mankind. So it was interesting, very interesting. All right, so we had the first actual match on the show. It was a country whipping match. It was Hawk with Animal versus Henry O. Godwin with Phineas, and this was used to build up to a fatal four-way tag team title match that they were setting up at In Your House Ground Zero. It was going to be Stone Cold Steve Austin and Dude Love defending their tag team championships against what the name of this tag team? The Godwins, the Legion of Doom, and Owen Hart and the British Bulldogs. So this was kind of used to build up that match. It was going to be the first time that the tag team titles had ever been defended in a fatal four-way tag team match, which is kind of weird to think that because we see so much of them nowadays. And then what else? Before the match, the Legion of Doom are backstage, and you see Hawk just whipping a bucket, like pretending that it's Henry O. Godwin. And then backstage, the Godwins cut a promo. Henry O. Godwin says that he's going to whip Hawk with this whip until he just can't take it anymore, and he just can't take the pain. Every time I see the Godwins, I'm not a huge fan of that tag team. They were heels. I believe they turned on their manager, Hillbilly Jim. I don't remember exactly. This match, also too we had Owen Hart and the British Bulldog on guest commentary for this match. The British Bulldog, like I mentioned, was the current reigning and defending European champion. Um, and This match I thought was solid. It wasn't anything special, but it was solid. Um, Hawk whips the crap out of you know Hemio Godwin with the whip to begin the match, and he just beats the crap out of him. He chokes him with it, and then eventually Phineas trips Hawk on the outside, and Hemio Godwin dominates the matchup for a while. He whips you know Hawk with the whip. And the way he won this match too, by the way, which was kind of a weird stip, was you had to whip your opponent and just knock him out of the ring. But there's like no disqualifications and that type of stuff. And Hemio Godwin chokes him with the whip as he's like as Hawk's in the ropes. And then Hemio Godwin starts to make his comeback. He hits a dive off the rope. He goes off the top rope and just hits him right in the throat with the whip. And then eventually Phineas hits Animal from behind with a bucket, and he gets in the ring, and the Godwins beat the crap out of Hawk. One of them holds him up, and what as Henry holds him up as Phineas just whips him with it. Then Animal comes in and evens the odds, hits them both with a bucket, and he hits Henry Godwin with the bucket, and he knocks him out of the ring. So Hawk wins. It was a weird finish. I thought you had to whip your opponent out of the ring with the whip, not just hit him. And Hawk's not the one that knocked him out of the ring, but whatever. I thought Owen Hart though was very good on commentary. I didn't really hear the British Bulldog say anything, but Owen Hart was very good on commentary. And obviously, this Fatal 4-Way Tag Team match seemed like a decent idea. Probably looking back, though, they should have just had to be just a traditional 2-1-2 tag match, especially considering the fact that you had that whole situation where, Owen Hart had pretty much injured Stone Cold at SummerSlam, and pretty much injured his neck. The story I thought would have worked. I believe it was up in the air about whether or not Stone Cold Steve Austin was going to be able to compete in this match because of that reason. So, I thought that was a decent story. And then this was also Owen Hart and the British Bulldog had all formed like a big faction. I think it was called like the Hart Foundation. I don't remember exactly the name of the faction. Let me just look it up real quick. But I believe it was the Hart Foundation. Not the Hart Foundation, but it was kind of a bigger version of it. I think it was Team Canada. I want to say it was Team Canada either. No, it was the Hart Foundation. It was pretty much a bigger version where they formed an alliance with Bret the Hitman Hart, and they were like supposed to be like a Canadian type of faction where they hated everyone from the United States. So they were also trying to set up because you had the Patriot who was challenging Bret the Hitman Hart at In Your House Ground Zero for his WWF title, and Owen Hart and the British Bulldog had to decide which one of them was going to face the Patriot one-on-one. So that was that. Overall, this was fine. Nothing special, but fine. The aftermath, obviously, I think I'm not going to really talk about Owen Hart and the British Bulldogs since they're going to be on the show later on. But unfortunately, Legion of Doom, this would be their last run in the WWF. Well, I mean, they would have a few more runs. I believe they had like a 2000 version, and they had the one in WWF was never really all that special. They like never won. I don't think they ever really won the tag titles all that much. They didn't really have they didn't really have that great of a run. They were dominant tag teams other places, but not in WWF. And then eventually, when they left WWF, I believe like in late 2003, Animal ended up passing away, but Hawk's still alive, and you still see him occasionally. They've done different versions of the Legion of Doom, where Hawk's teamed up with somebody else. And then, you don't really see Hawk much around. I remember I saw him. No, actually, I didn't see him. I thought they played it up like he was going to come out, but it was somebody else. I thought I saw him at Top Rope Promotion one time, but it was a different team that came out like them. And then, as for the Godwins, They were pretty much like one of those bad creations that the WWF had made in that '96 era, when the '95 era. I think they probably just slowly faded away afterwards, and because I don't really, no one really remembers that team that much, so it was kind of, yeah, that was just not a good team at all. I don't really, like I said, it was one of those bad creations by the WWF in '96. I'm gonna see what happened to the Godwins exactly. Um, so in your house, ground zero. Let me just look this up real quick. Just give me a second. I Godwins. So I'm on the Wikipedia page. It's I think they did just slowly fade away though. I mean, they still were around like in '98, but yeah, they just actually one of them, don't know which one, whatever one is Dennis Knight became to be known as Midian and Naked Midian. So that's interesting. Um, yeah, I mean, like I just think the Godwins just slowly faded away. I can't really find exactly, like they had a retirement match and then they um, you know, they became known as Southern Justice, um, and they feuded with DX. Um, One of them injured themselves and needed surgery. Um, One of them retired Canterbury, whichever one that is. I don't exactly know. Um, um, Retired from the company because he ended up getting a neck injury, and then Dennis Knight um, stayed with the company. So I guess I don't exactly know which one is which is the problem. I don't know a lot about the Godwins. I mean, I know of them, but I don't know really all that much about them. But yeah, they were just a terrible tag team, and were not the best creators for the that the WWF made. It was a pretty um, bad gimmick. So that's pretty much what happened with the Godwins. So Legion of Doom, but obviously Legion of Doom, you have probably one of the best tag teams ever. So it's actually cool to see them wrestling. But yeah, I don't really care about the Godwins at all. But yeah, this was a decent segment actually. I mean, I didn't really think the match was bad. It was all right. It was solid. All right. So next, Sergeant Slaughter is backstage and he knocks on Brian Pillman's locker room. And Brian Pillman's like, "What do you want?" And he gives him a dress and he tells him that he has to wear this dress until he wins a match because the whole gimmick is that him and Goldust had a match, and since Goldust won that match, Brian Pillman, whoever had lost that match, would have to wear a dress until they won a match. So that was the whole gimmick. It was kind of sad because Brian Pillman, you had was like this psycho and he was doing things like wearing a dress. It was kind of sad. And obviously he was feuding with Goldust over the services of uh, Malina, and So it was kind of sad that they were kind of relegating Brian Pillman to this in a sense. I thought it was kind of pathetic. But I wonder if it was because it was punishment for the whole thing that happened where he was feuding with Stone Cold Steve Austin and they had that gun incident. So I don't know what it was. But Brian Pillman, I always thought though, when every time I see him, he's just a psycho. Like you look at him and you actually believe he's like off his walker. Like you actually believe that he's a lunatic, and I think that's awesome. All right, so next was I have his name right here, Scott Putski versus Tony Williams. Not really much of a reason for this match. It was just kind of there. None of these wrestlers are even anything anymore. Um, and during the match, Goldust and Molina come out and they join and they go on guest commentary. And the match was pretty much a basic wrestling match. Scott Putski hit the backbreaker onto Tony Williams, sorry. Um, and then during the match, it cuts away to like the Goldust cam, and it shows it into Brian Pillman's locker room, and it shows him dressing up in his dress, and this happens as a match is going on. So, you know, no one really paid attention to the match. They didn't even really call the match really. The whole focus was just on Brian Pillman and Jerry the King Lawler and Vince McMahon were talking about how this wasn't fair. But Jim Ross, I will give him credit, did try to call this match, but it just obviously no one cared about it. I don't even know if the fans paid attention to it. But eventually, pretty much the finish comes. Scott Putski wins. He wins with like a clothesline or something, and it really didn't matter because after he wins, they don't even cut to the guys that were in the match. It just kind of segues back to the whole Goldust Brian Pillman feud. So then afterwards, Sergeant Slaughter comes out and he forces Goldust to Molina to leave. Overall, um, this was pointless. I didn't mind the idea of Goldust coming out and humiliating Brian Pillman, but why the fuck would they do it while another match is going on? Like that just didn't make any sense to me. Because because this just kind of downgraded this match. And it really kind of took away from this match. This match was just basic, would have just probably been basic anyways, but I didn't even really pay attention to it because I was just paying attention to Brian Pillman changing into his dress. And yeah, I just wasn't a fan of this. And I couldn't even tell you the aftermath of any of these guys because I think they were pretty much no name guys. Scott Putski, I think, was like they said he was wrestling at like his first pay per view match, and if he was, damn, he got screwed. So overall, like I couldn't even tell you the aftermath. That was obviously for Goldust. Goldust pretty much became a huge veteran in wrestling. He became a pretty interesting character. You know, he was actually he had debuted in 1996 as Goldust and a great character. He was a heel at first, but then they transitioned him back to a face, and then I think he would turn heel, go back to his just regular wrestler persona as Dustin Rhodes occasionally, and then he went to WCW. He was supposed to be that seven character, but because it was too offensive, they just had him come out and just cut a shoot promo about it. And then I think he left WCW, and then he came back to when eventually to WWF in 2002. He became like a tag team champion, and then he left the company in 2006. He went to TNA for a little while, and then he came back in 2008, had another run, and he had a pretty decent one. He had an okay run in 2008. Then he ended up getting injured in 2010. Then he left again. Then he came back in 2013. Probably had the best run of his career. He looked like he was in great shape. He was, a multiple-time tag team champion in the company. And then eventually, and he's actually having a really good run. And now he's actually back to the old Goldust of this time. Not as much as around this time, but he's kind of gone back to his old roots as being Goldust, saying that the golden age is back. So Goldust has actually had a pretty decent wrestling career. He's wrestled in all of pretty much the top wrestling organizations except for ECW. So I thought, obviously Goldust has had a really good wrestling career. Obviously though, these other two guys who just became nothing. I don't even think you ever heard of them ever again. So yeah, that's about it. All right, so next, Undertaker cuts a promo backstage, and he says that he is gonna watch um, Shawn Michaels match with Mankind, and he says that at Ground Zero, Shawn Michaels isn't gonna need any insurance policy because at Ground Zero he's gonna rest in peace. And overall, I thought it was a decent Undertaker promo, and obviously, I still like seeing Taker. It's kind of sad to watch his segments a little bit now, considering the fact that now he's retired, and it's kind of weird to think that he is retired because he had been around for so long. I'm not really going to talk about the aftermath of what happens with the Undertaker because I don't know if he's going to show up again or not in this show, so I will talk about that later on. But overall, good Undertaker promo. It was good. I enjoyed it. All right, so we had the next match. It was Flash Funk versus Brian Pillman, where if Brian Pillman won, he wouldn't have to wear his dress. I guess because I guess the whole story is he has to win a match on Raw. Um, I guess I don't mind that concept. It gives people a reason to want to watch Raw. Um, and I gotta say, even though this is like a terrible idea, I think Brian Pillman makes it work. The way he acts about how he has to wear the dress, how he doesn't want to be shown in it. I think it works. But the beginning of the match, Brian Pillman absolutely destroys Flash Funk. Funk makes a little bit of a comeback. He hits a Inseguri, and eventually he hits a drop kick. He goes for a moonsault. Pillman gets the knees up, hits a DDT. He's about to make the cover, but then Goldust and Molina's music hits and they come out. Goldust has got popcorn with him, even though I thought he was thrown out of the building, but whatever. And then he shows the footage that was recorded earlier of Brian Pillman changing into his dress. Pillman freaks out, but then he goes to go after Flash Funk. Flash Funk beats him with a roll up, and that was the end of the match. And Pillman's pissed, and yeah, it was pretty basic. Wasn't anything special. Um, and Yeah, it really wasn't anything all that special. Um, and then The aftermath obviously is that eventually I think Pillman would win a match on Raw, but then he eventually got the services of Marlena. He became her sex slave. He had gotten her services for 30 days because he defeated Goldust in a match for it. And the feud never really got to finish because unfortunately Brian Pillman on October 5th, 1997 ended up passing away. I believe he had a heart attack. Just gonna check on that. It says because he never because it says on October 5th, 1997, Brian Pillman was scheduled to wrestle Dude Love at the WWF pay-per-view Bad Blood in Your House. As the show was getting close to bell time at 7 p.m. and Pillman hadn't arrived, Jim Cornette was instructed to find his whereabouts. Cornette contacted the Fudgel Hall Motel in Bloomington, Minnesota, where Pillman had stayed the previous night and was told by the receptionist that the maids had found Pillman dead earlier that day at 1:09 Central Time. He was 35 years old. An autopsy attributed Pillman's death to a heart attack caused by a previously undetected heart condition. Wash. Oh, shit. I don't know, but he had a heart disease. The condition was also led to the death of his father years before. So obviously he had a heart condition. So unfortunately, Brian Pillman ended up passing away, and his storyline with Goldust never finished out. And obviously, I think Brian Pillman was definitely someone that was missed. I definitely think too once the Attitude Era had finally fully started, I think Pillman would have been a great addition to it, considering the fact of how much of a cycle they were making him out to be. Um, and I think he would have worked especially too for the hardcore championship division. So it was a shame about what happened to him. As for Flash Funk, I don't think we really made much of Flash Funk. I think he was just kind of a jobber. Um, Flash Funk also was he was too cold Scorpio from ECW, so like you can see why he was named Flash Funk because the WWF wanted to probably fuck with him. Um, he in early 1999 he requested time off due to personal problems, but he was instead released by WWF. He's wrestled in Pro Wrestling Noah. He returned for special like appearances in 2006 and 2009. Um, and now he just wrestles in the independent scene. He wrestled a match in Big Time Wrestling. He actually wrestled Sabu with Mick Foley as the special guest referee. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But now that explained, he's also wrestled in WCW, so he's been around. Um, but I guess that does explain why he was a WCW and ECW guy. That does explain why the WW plus he was also African American. Obviously, you know how WWF treats their African American superstars. So yeah, this match wasn't that good. It really wasn't anything special. Pillman was the star of this match though. So yeah, the match really wasn't that good. Okay, so next, Vince McMahon interviews Jude Love, and he asks him, and obviously the whole story is obviously we have that situation I mentioned earlier where Owen Hart ended up injuring Stone Cold Steve Austin, and it's unclear whether he could compete in that fatal four-way tag team match. Um, you even had like the last week where Owen Hart was bragging about how he took out Stone Cold Steve Austin and he wanted him to give up that Intercontinental Championship, since the only reason why Austin won it was because you know, was because Owen Hart showed compassion. Austin said he was going to wrestle him tonight, but the doctors were against it. So instead, Sergeant Slaughter put Dude Love in the match, and Dude Love won because of interference from Stone Cold Steve Austin when he hit Owen Hart with the slammy. So this kind of led to this match. So this kind of led to this. And Dude Love says that Stone Cold Steve Austin is going to be back very soon, kicking some ass. And then he says, then he gets asked about the fatal four-way tag team match, and he says that there's only a few words to describe uh, the Legion of Doom, and that's "oh, what a rush." And he says that the Godwins wouldn't know cool if they smoked it, which I thought was awesome. And Owen Hart and the British Bulldog are two people that Stone Cold Steve Austin aren't fans of, and they're going to he's going to lay a can of whoop ass on him. And then Vince McMahon asks Dude Love who he picks to win the match between Shawn Michaels and Mankind. And Dude Love says that Mankind's going to take Shawn Michaels and beat the crap out of him and take him right all over the arena. Obviously, I kind of liked how they tried to make it seem like that Dude Love and Mankind weren't the same person, even though they both looked the same. So I thought that was kind of nice. And then afterwards, Shawn Michaels comes on the screen and he says that he says that Dude Love is full of crap, and he says that tonight he is going to kick his alter ego or whoever he is, Mankind, teeth down his throat, and he says that tonight his insurance policy is going to show himself, and then he walks off, and Dude Love says that it doesn't matter who Shawn Michaels wins, it's not going to save him from the beating that he's going to receive from Mankind. Then afterwards, Dude Love's music hits. Two girls who obviously planted fans go to come in the ring, and Dude Love's afraid, but then eventually he comes in and dances with them, and I thought that was nice. And yeah, this was fine. I obviously everyone knows out of the three alter egos of Mick Foley, Dude Love wasn't my favorite one. I thought he was a little bit just because it wasn't obviously Mankind and Cactus Jack were booked a little bit more seriously. Dude Love wasn't a terrible character; it was something different for Mick Foley to do. And obviously, one thing I always respect about Mick Foley is that he made three characters, technically four if you count himself woke. He was able to play three characters to perfection. And that's always going to be something I'm going to respect about Mick Foley, no matter what he does now. Even though he's kind of hurting his credibility nowadays, but you get what I'm saying. Um, and yeah, but overall, I enjoyed this segment. I thought it was pretty decent. All right, so we get more fan interviews about who they think is going to win. between Shawn Michaels and Mankind, and pretty much everyone picks fucking Shawn Michaels, um, which proves that heels did get over back then. People rooted for heels, so I don't know, why people don't think that. A lot of the people that did pick Shawn Michaels though were like women, like young women, so like all the guys. But there was some little kids that even picked Shawn Michaels to win. The only guy that picked, there was only one guy that really picked Mankind to win, and the weird thing is Mankind's the face. So I'm just saying, like, people did pick the heels to win. They did root for the heels, so it's weird. All right, so then we had the next match. Well, actually, no, we didn't have the next match. It was the Patriot backstage. I forgot to mention during the Flash Funk Brian Pillman match, Sergeant Slaughter announced that he was going to turn the one-on-one match since like the British Bulldog and Owen Hall couldn't decide which one of them was going to face the Patriot. He turned it into a tag team match where the Patriot was going to have a mystery opponent that was going to be revealed during that match, and then you see the Patriot backstage, like talking to a tag team partner, but we don't exactly see who it is. And we have the match. Owen Howard said that they're going to dedicate this match to the great Canadian hero, Bret the Hitman Hart, who's watching backstage. And, the Patriots theme song, he comes out, and obviously his theme song sounds familiar. His theme song is now used by, Kurt Angle. You may remember him. He won the Olympics, and he became like a huge star in professional wrestling. Kurt Angle's wrestled in WWE and TNA. Kind of interesting to hear it here. It's really weird to hear it without the "You Suck" chant, but I think it's kind of interesting that the Patriot had it first. I think I've always known that, anyways, but I kind of forgot that until I just saw it, and we found out that his mystery opponent was none other than Ken Shamrock. Ken Shamrock was someone that the WWF had brought in around WrestleMania 13. He was the special guest referee for the submission match between Stone Cold Steve Austin and Bret the Hitman Hart, and he was brought in as like a huge draw because he had just come in from the UFC and he was just coming into the professional wrestling world. The Patriot too was someone that they were highly pushing for some reason. It was kind of weird. He was because they were doing the whole United States versus Canada. I think that's why he got over. He defeated Bret the Hitman Hart in his first match, and they were gearing him up to face Bret Hart at the In Your House Ground Zero pay-per-view. And we had the match. The match I thought was a good match. It was a good tag team match. The Patriot, Ken Shamrock, and the British Bulldog start off the match, but the British Bulldog wants nothing to do with Ken Shamrock, so he tags in Owen Hart. Ken Shamrock gets the best of him, and then the Patriot comes in and he attacks Owen Hart, and then eventually the heels get the heat on Ken Shamrock for a while. I thought they hit some good solid heel tag team moves. They hit backbreakers, a back suplex, all that type of stuff. Then eventually Ken Shamrock takes him down with the clothesline. And then the Patriot gets the hot tag. He starts hitting all his moves. He hits a shoulder tackle off the top turnbuckle. And then eventually the British Bulldog and the Patriot hit a double clothesline on each other. And then Owen Hart puts a chair into the ring. And as this is happening, you saw Bret Hart watching this match backstage, but then eventually he comes out to the ring. And when they both get laid out, Bret the Hitman Hart acts like he's going to make his way to the ring, but Sergeant Slaughter comes out to stop him because he doesn't want this match to get out of control. So this distracts the referee. So this Owen Hart tries to slide a chair into the ring. And he distracts Ken Shamrock so he can't go in and help the Patriot. The British Bulldog tries to use the chair, but the Patriot hits like a full Nelson back suplex on the chair onto the British Bulldog for the win, and that was the end of the match. Made sense to have the Patriots team win since he was gearing up to go up against Bret Hart for the WWF Championship. And obviously, the aftermath of all this came. Ken Shamrock would go on to become a pretty decent sized star in the WWF. He would, become an Intercontinental Champion. He would feud, and he would join up with Vince McMahon when they turned heel as in the corporation. And he became probably a really good technical wrestler. So I thought, the Ken Shamrock went pretty far. The Patriot would go on to lose his WWF Championship match to Bret the Hitman Hart at In Your House Ground Zero, then In Your House Bad Blood. He would go on to lose a 6-man tag team match against Bret Hart, Owen Hart, and the British Bulldog. And then eventually he was supposed to compete in the Survivor Series match, but he ended up getting torn triceps. So then eventually he ended up getting released from his contract, and then he retired from professional wrestling afterwards. And then eventually we found out that his whole career he was on steroids and cocaine. And, you know, we found out that he was arrested in 2002 for forging a prescription that he could use painkillers, and then eventually he ended up owning a car dealership, and he just recently showed up on Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast. He did an interview talking about the whole Chris Benoit tragedy and how the 50 wrestlers that he worked with are now all dead. So, yeah. And I think when I went to Big Time Wrestling, I did see the Patriot appear there. I don't remember if he had a match or anything, but I remember he was there. Um, and yeah, and obviously Owen Hart, would continue his run with the WWF. After Bret Hart left the company, he was used pretty much crap. He became known. I forget the name of the gimmick. Um, the Blue Blazer, and I was supposed to do that big entrance, and unfortunately he ended up dying, and it was sad for Owen Hart. The British Bulldog was shortly out afterwards, and he ended up. I think he's dead now too. So it's kind of sad to watch this match, knowing that Owen Hart and the British Bulldog are both have both died, and yeah, Ken Shamrock I think left WWF. I think he left like late '99, and I don't know exactly what he does now, but whatever. The only one that so no one really is with the company anymore. Two of these wrestlers are gone, so it's a little sad to watch that match. And the Patriot doesn't wrestle anymore. But I still thought this was a good tag team match here. I enjoyed it. The finish, you could say, was a little all over the place, but I actually didn't mind that they had Sasha Sora come out and try to restrain order and stuff. So I liked that part of it. And like I said, I thought the match was good. And they actually kind of had like I even mentioned this, but Raw kind of like cut to a part two. Like they went back and did the Raw intro and did the whole pyro and everything. And seeing pyro on this show really makes me miss the pyro in WWE. I really wish they hadn't gotten rid of the pyro because pyro definitely helps your enjoyment of the show. So overall, this was a good tag team match here. All right, so next it shows Bret the Hitman Hart returning home to Canada with his WWF Championship. He talks about how he's honored to be going to Canada because he said that when he won the WWF title at SummerSlam, he said he was going to bring the title back to Canada, and he said that it proves that he says that he talks about a lot of the Americans from the South aren't going to like that the WWF champion's Canadian, but that's just going to have to something they're going to have to deal with. You see all like the Canadian fans talking and pretty much making fun of America, which is kind of weird. They kind of made those fans come off as heels. It was awkward. And Bret Hart talks about, how he's happy to be back home in Canada to a crowd that didn't turn his back on him like America did. And he said that he's not carrying that title for the Americans. He's carrying it for all the other countries around the world who didn't turn his back on him. And he says that he's going to carry that title everywhere with him. And he says that he's going to hold on to that title for a long time and be a long and win that title everywhere with him. Overall, decent stuff. It actually, this was, obviously Bret Hart wasn't always the best talker, but in 1997, this was when Bret Hart became a great talker because of the fact that he was being himself and stuff, and he just had that fire in him. And overall, I thought it was pretty enjoyable. This was like the real Bret Hart. Like it wasn't fake; it was a shoot, so I liked it. Okay, so next we see Shawn Michaels talking to somebody backstage. It's probably his insurance and policy, but we weren't supposed to know that yet. So we sees him talking, and then he sees the cameraman recording him, and he's like, "Hey, get out of here! We don't need you. This is private." So overall, I thought this was nice. A nice way to build up to that insurance policy coming up. So overall, I enjoyed it. Okay, so next, the Patriot gets interviewed, and he talks about how Bret the Hitman Hart is a great wrestler, but he's not the best wrestler in the world, and he's going to show Bret Hart that his success in the WWF hasn't been a fluke, and he's going to win the WWF Championship and prove that he belongs in the WWF. and then he gets attacked from behind by Bret Hart with a chair, and he hits him right in the back, and then he just beats the crap out of him, and like officials and Sergeant Slaughter have to pull him off. And I thought this was nice. It was a good way to build up to the pay-per-view match. One problem, maybe you could say, with Bret Hart's title run in '97 is he didn't really have a lot of formidable opponents to really face. I think it was like the Patriot, and like not really knocking the Patriot, but they clearly were just trying to, um, fire away at like America versus Canada storyline, and that's what the reason that the Patriot pretty much got this title match. But also like maybe Stone Cold Steve Austin's injury had an effect. Maybe he was supposed to at some point face Bret Hart for the title. And obviously you had Taker going into that feud with Shawn Michaels. So one flaw about Bret Hart's title reign is I didn't really feel like it was a big deal. He was still featured pretty well throughout the show, but like he didn't really have a lot of great opponents to face for that WWF Championship. Because all the top guys were pretty much just Shawn Michaels, Mick Foley, Mankind, or Dude Love, whatever you want to call him. But since Stone Cold Steve Austin, but he was hurt, and then you had I don't really know who else. So like everybody else that he could have faced, like Owen Hart, the British Bulldog, were all with him in the faction. So the one that could be, you could say, the one flaw about Bret Hart's title run in '97 was that a lot of opponents he had, a lot of the opponents that he could have faced really weren't credible. All right, so next we had Farouk versus Chains, and obviously the reason this match was happening, you had Farouk, who was in the Nation of Domination, you had Chains, who was in DOA, Disciples of Apocalypse, I believe. No, that's a different team. The DOA. It was the Disciples of Apocalypse. That was a different team. Get that confused with the Acolytes. But anyhow, pretty much that those two factions were feuding with each other, so that's why this match was happening. The Nation of Domination just kicked out Ahmed Johnson from the group, which is going to be important later on in this match. So the Nation of Domination was short a member, but during this match, both members of both the Nation of Domination and DOA were banned from ringside, so this was just a straight up one-on-one match. So Farouk tries to ambush Change from behind. Change fights back. Farouk dominates the matchup for a while. He hits like hip attacks on Chains. Chains starts to make his comeback, and eventually he goes to hit Farouk, but he accidentally knocks down the official. Chains hits a clothesline, and eventually we see Rocky Maivia. Rocky Maivia had made his debut in the WWF in Survivor Series of 1996. He was a huge baby face, and they tried to book him as Rocky Maivia as a baby face, but nobody really caught on to it. So eventually, Rocky Maivia laid out Change with a rock bottom, and he helped Farouk covers him. Referee counts 3, and Rocky Maivia officially joined the Nation of Domination. And he pretty much turned heel here. And obviously, this was a huge moment for him because Rocky Maivia really wasn't getting over as a face. No one cared for him. So Rocky Maivia turning heel was something that needed to happen. And this, in a sense, this didn't officially make Rocky Maivia. This in a sense helped make him a star a little bit. Rocky Maivia, obviously everybody knows him now as The Rock. He went on to become like a multi-time Intercontinental Champion. Eventually, he would break away from the Nation of Domination. I believe he kicked Farouk out of the group, and he led the group himself, and then he just became known as The Rock. And then eventually, The Rock turned back into a face. And he really wasn't getting over. He was feuded with Vince McMahon as like the corporation. So then they did the double turn where The Rock won the WWF title at Survivor Series 1998 from Mankind, and The Rock became known as the corporate champion. He wrestled Austin at WrestleMania 15 for the belt. And then Austin obviously went over. Then eventually afterwards, The Rock turned back into a face, and The Rock officially was made into a top guy. But then The Rock became known as like the real face of the WWE once in Survivor Series 1999 when Stone Cold and Steve Austin had to take time off due to neck injury, so that allowed The Rock to kind of take the top spot at the company. The Rock became a mega superstar, and pretty much The Rock became like an integral part of the Attitude Era. Um, and yeah, this really launched The Rock. Poor Farouk though. Farouk really didn't get much in this company. He ended up becoming a part of the APA, which is the Acolytes, which is what I talked about. After he was kicked out of the Nation of Domination, and obviously the DOA. I don't really know what happened in DOA actually. But yeah, then eventually Farouk used his real name Juan Simmons and did the whole damn gimmick. And I wish, but it says, um, but a lot of members after Survivor Series, um, on 97, some of the members ended up leaving the group. Um, they just became like a pretty much just a standard tag team after the whole group started fizzling away. Um, DOA ended up turning heel and sided with Paul Ellison and the manager. They would feud with the Legion of Doom. Because Skull and 8 Ball, who was in the group, started, became tag team wrestlers, and Chains was set to be a singles wrestler, and Chains left the company in 1998. So this was left with Skull and 8 Ball. But they would use the DOA name. Then afterwards, Paul Ellison left them, and eventually they both left with WWF, and they both went to WCW, but it doesn't really say anything that happened with them afterwards. It just DOA was one of those failed factions. I think the WWF was just trying to throw factions out there because this was they had a lot of factions at the time. I think they had like the Job Squad, they had the DOA, they had the Nation of Domination, then obviously the faction I'm going to get to later on in the night. I think because the NWO was becoming a huge faction in WCW, the WWF was trying to find this faction that was going to really work in their company, and obviously because they were throwing so many factions out, it just didn't work. But I think one big moment you can take away from this match is obviously Rocky Maivia's heel turn, because that kind of will slowly lead into the Rock becoming a big star in the WWF, and now the Rock's a big Hollywood movie star now. So that would be one takeaway from this match is the Rock turning heel. Okay, so next backstage, cameraman tried to see what's going on with the Nation of Domination, and Farouk just tells them to get out of there. So they shut the door, and DOA, or the Disciples of Apocalypse, try to break in. They just are trying to get in there. Referees and Sergeant Slaughter come up and try to get him to calm down. I thought this was actually pretty cool. It made sense. It was believable. They would want to get at him right away. And that they tried to break in. I thought it was actually kind of badass. I liked it. All right, so next, Sabre was supposed to come out, and she was supposed to be the guest ring announcer for the next match. Damn, Sabre was hot back then. Obviously, I think she was with Mark Mello, and they did that whole storyline. I don't know if it had fizzled. I don't think it had, but she did that. She she ripped off and showed like her puppies with like paint on them, and Vince had to come up and cover the jacket. I remember that stuff. And obviously now Sable's married to a certain Beast Incarnate, who's going to be who is your current Universal Champion. But before she can be the guest when announced that the Patriot comes out, and I actually kind of like how he came out out of nowhere. But I thought that was a nice touch. And he says that he can take any man face to face, one on one. But if you hit me from behind in the back of the head with a chair, then we have an issue. So he calls out Bret Hart. Bret Hart comes out. They get into a fight. He pretty much kicks Bret Hart's ass. But then the Hart Foundation come out. Brian Pillman, Owen Hart, and the British Bulldog, and they beat him down. It's 4-on-1. They're just stopping a mud hole in him, and then Bret Hart hits a backbreaker onto the Patriot, and then afterwards he puts the Canadian flag on him. Referees are trying to break him off. I think Jerry Briscoe came out there, and obviously Sergeant Slaughter again. He was all over this show, and yeah, overall I thought the segment worked. It was a good fight, and I liked that it built up to the title match at Ground Zero. All right, so next, Mankind's backstage, and he has a promo, and he says that, and he tells Shawn Michaels that he hopes that insurance policy that he has is life insurance, because he feels like tonight that he has a something stuck in his throat, and that's excitement. But what's going to be stuck in Shawn Michaels' throat is his liver. Great promo by Mankind. I loved it. It was awesome. All right, so next we had a vignette for Brackus, who cuts promos. It was in Germany, you can't understand it, but I have his Wikipedia thing up here, and it says, this is what he would say. My name is Brackus, and I come from Germany. I weigh 300 pounds, and when I come to America to the World Wrestling Federation, I will destroy people. But it says the wrestler that he's going to destroy. I'm reading his Wikipedia page, and he actually kind of has like a funny um, little career. It says that he's actually trained by Bret the Hitman Hart and The Rock, which is interesting. He originally debuted under the ring name Algo. He defeated Mr. X at a house show, but then he was just renamed Brackus on December 2nd, 1996. He only wrestled at house shows, um, but then afterwards, he didn't even make his debut at WWF. It says in late 1997 he was sent by the WWF to the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania based independent promotion Extreme Championship Wrestling, or ECW for short, as part of a working relationship between the two promotions. The segment of two ECW was intended to season his ability Brackus's abilities before he debuted on WWF television. Um, then he did some stuff in ECW. Um, he wrestled for the ECW World Title at SummerSlam 1998. That was interesting. Then he returned to the WWF. Um, he lost to Goldust. He's got into random feuds. He competed in the Brawl for Wall shooting style tournament where he didn't win. He was eliminated. Um, he finally got like an official debut match, I guess. Um, he actually didn't even know that the Brawl for Wall was the shoot fight was a shoot fighting tournament. He thought it was worked, and he had one fighter match and a squash match on an episode of Raw on July 27th, 1998. Then eventually he returned to the Independents, but then he retired because of a knee and shoulder injury. And yeah, so pretty much they promoted this guy. He never really got much of a chance. Who knows how good he would have been, but you know, it's really weird how that happens, I guess. I don't know. Really weird. Whatever. All right. So then we had the main event. It was Shawn Michaels versus Mankind. And Mankind comes out and he comes out with a trash can. He throws it in the ring. Shawn Michaels immediately attacks him. Mankind tries to fight back, but Shawn Michaels hits him with a trash can a couple of times. He puts it on his head. He jumps off and hits an axe handle from the second turnbuckle. And Mankind gets like the trash can, like the bag stuck on him. But he tries to hit the mandible claw on Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels hits a low blow. And the match was just an all-out fight. Mankind fights back though. He throws Michaels. He drops him like face first into the guardrail. He just beats the crap out of him. Michaels hits a backdrop onto the announcer's table. He hits an elbow drop from um, the apron, like a suicide dive elbow drop. and he just lands right on Mankind, which ended up cutting open his elbow. He throws Mankind into the steps, bounces his back of the head against the post. Mankind tries to fight back. He tries to make a comeback, but Shawn Michaels is just too dominant for him. And doing this, you see Hunter Hearst Helmsley and China making their way to the ring. And then it goes to commercial, and Shawn Michaels is still dominating the match. He hits a body slam into an elbow drop, and he covers Mankind. Mankind kicks out, and then Mankind starts to make his. He hits another mandible claw. Michaels rolls on the outside, and he throws Mankind's knees first into the steps again, and Shawn Michaels continues to dominate, but Mankind starts to make his comeback. He hits a running knee into the corner, and then he hits and then you see Ravishing Rick Rude make his way down to the ring, and then Mankind hits a double arm DDT onto Shawn Michaels, covers him. Michaels kicks out of it, and then China distracts the referee. Ravishing Rick Rude hits Mankind off the head with a steel chair, which allows Shawn Michaels to hit Sweet Chin Music for the win. And yeah, I thought that was really good. I thought this was a really good match here. I really enjoyed it. It was all time. It was very fast paced, and obviously this match was voted match of the year at that yeah, obviously this match was voted match of the year in '96, so this delivered the same way. And then afterwards, Undertaker goes to come out. He goes to confront Shawn Michaels, but then afterwards you hear Paul Bear, and he says that Kane is coming. His brother Kane is coming, and he says that Undertaker's gonna burn in hell, and then like the fire goes off, and then the show goes off the air. Because obviously the story is that Undertaker had a brother named Kane, and that he had apparently killed in a fire that Paul Bear knew about, and Paul Bear was warning him that Kane was coming. So they were really building into that, and yeah, this was a really good match. This obviously set up the formation of D-Generation X. Um, Shawn Michaels and Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Ravishing Rick Rude and China all became DX. Obviously, Ravishing Rick Rude ended up leaving shortly afterwards, and then eventually ended up passing away, which was kind of sad. And then, Hunter Hearst Helmsley then became known as Triple H, and I believe he got the name change in 1998, 99-ish. And Shawn Michaels and Taker would go on to have the matches. Will go on to have the match at Ground Zero, which ended in a no contest, which would lead at Bad Blood to the first ever Hell in a Cell match, where Shawn Michaels would win, where Kane would finally make his debut to WWF, where he ended up ripping open the cell and screwing over the Undertaker, and this led to Kane and Undertaker having their great feud, which culminated at WrestleMania 14, where Undertaker won, but then the feud would continue into Unforgiven, where Taker won the Inferno match, and then they would take a break from the feud. Kane would go on to win the WWF title for like one night, then he lost it the next night. Then Taker and Kane would become an alliance as the Brothers of Destruction, and then they would kind of have on and off alliances and feuds. Obviously Kane and Taker refeuded in 2000. And in the 2000 SummerSlam, where Undertaker ended up unmasking Kane, and then they won the WCW Tag Team Championships together at SummerSlam 1990. At SummerSlam in 2001, and then when Undertaker went to the biker gimmick, Kane ended up burying him alive, and this led to the WrestleMania 20 match where Undertaker squashed Kane. And then in 2010, they reignited and had their final feud where Kane defeated him in a no holds barred match at Night of Champions, in a Hell in a Cell match at Hell in a Cell where Paul Bear returned, and then at Bragging Rights in a Buried Alive match. And then they would have their final reunion as Brothers of Destruction, where they came out and fought together on the thousandth episode of Monday Night Raw. As for the Generation X side, DX pretty much was finally the faction I think that works for the WWF. They were really doing all types of stuff, like Cosin, where they did that segment where they got in trouble by the network. So they made fun of Trump. They had to make fun of it by doing that DX press conference. They would just do all types of stuff. They did the whole thing where they mocked the Nation of Domination, and Obviously this would lead to Shawn Michaels having those 2 matches with Taker. Then it would lead to Shawn Michaels kindling his feud with Bret the Hitman Hart at Survivor Series 1997, where the whole Montreal Screwjob happened and Shawn Michaels would win the title. Bret Hart ended up walking out of the company, and he would go on to WCW. Bret Hart would fail in the WCW would use Bret Hart to shit, and then eventually got that concussion, and then Bret Hart had to be taken out of wrestling. Bret Hart had to stop wrestling, and he didn't talk to anybody from Vince McMahon or Shawn Michaels for years. And Vince McMahon then became the big heel from the Montreal Screwjob. Shawn Michaels and Undertaker went on to have their casket match at the Royal Rumble in 1998, where Shawn Michaels won because of Kane, where he lit Taker on fire. Then Stone Cold Steve Austin would eventually come back to wrestling. And you could think if that injury didn't happen, maybe Stone Cold wouldn't be known as the Texas Rattlesnake. I mean, he still probably would have been, but that definitely elevated it even more. And he would lose the WWF title to Stone Cold Steve Austin. And then Shawn Michaels had to retire because of his back problems. So then this led Triple H, which would become known as, to lead D-Generation X. D-Generation X continued to grow in numbers. Triple H would become a European champion, and he would get into that feud with The Rock for the Intercontinental Championship, where it was DX versus the Nation of Domination. And then eventually DX turned face, and eventually Triple H would turn heel, though, at WrestleMania 15, siding with the corporation. And then Triple H just started to get the rocket ship pushed off his ass. He eventually went on to win the WWF Championship from Mankind on an episode of Raw in 1999. And he would win and lose the title because he just wasn't getting over. Then eventually he got into that feud with Vince McMahon over Stephanie McMahon. And because obviously China got kicked out of the picture because technically they were together. And then China pretty much was just buried for a while. And then Triple H pretty much got into the company. He became a pretty decent sized star in the Attitude Era. Triple H would go on to win the WWF title a number of times. The McMahon Helmsley era would become a thing. He would get infused with Mankind, The Rock, and Stone Cold Steve Austin. And then eventually, after everybody left, the Ruthless Aggression era, we had that reign of terror from 2002 to 2005 with Triple H, where he would just blow through everybody. We had like a little bit of a DX reunion because Shawn Michaels would come back out of retirement. He would be the commissioner from time to time, but then he would fully came out of retirement when Triple H turned on him. They had that SummerSlam match, and they had a great feud. And they would have matches at SummerSlam in 2002 in the street fight. And then you obviously had Shawn Michaels win the World Heavyweight Championship from Triple H in the Elimination Chamber match. And then obviously you had the 3 Stages of Hell match where Triple H regained his championship. And then Shawn Michaels and Triple H would be in 6-man tag team matches together. They would be in last man standing matches. And then they finally had their final blow-off match at Bad Blood 2004 in the Hell in a Cell match. And then they fully reformed DX in 2006 where they went up against the McMahon family, where DX ended up going over in that feud. And then obviously Triple H ended up tearing a squad at New Year's Revolution in 2007. So he had to be taken off TV. Shawn Michaels was left wrestling by himself. Then they would reform DX again in 2009 into like a shitty PG version of it. And then Triple H, DX would go on to finally win the unified WWE Tag Team Championships at the TLC, which stands for Table, Ladders, and Chairs pay-per-view in 2009. And then they would hold on to them until February of 2010. And then DX had the final match together, invoking the rematch clause in an episode of Raw for the unified WWE Tag Team titles. And then eventually Shawn Michaels had his final match with The Undertaker actually at WrestleMania 26. And they had the match of the year candidate a year before WrestleMania 25. Then they had the match Streak versus Career, where Shawn Michaels had his final match ever. He hasn't wrestled anywhere else. And Triple H would become a single star. Well, he already was, but you get what I'm saying. Then eventually Triple H would work his final full-time schedule in 2010. And then he would become a part-timer in 2011. He had those great matches with Taker at WrestleMania 27 and WrestleMania 28. They had the end of an era Hell in a Cell match where Shawn Michaels was the guest referee. and they kind of used that. And then Shawn Michaels and Triple H still do storylines together, and they finally had a full DX except for China reunion on the 1000th episode of Raw, where they had X Pac, the New Age Outlaws come out, and DX would fully reform, and then then the New Age Outlaws would have a short run in WWE once again. And they would win the WWE Tag Team titles from Goldust and his brother, and then they would lose the titles on an episode of Raw. And what else? Pretty much it. Triple H now is the COO of the WWE. He runs NXT, and yeah, nothing else really to say. Mankind would go on to become a three-time WWE WWF champion. He would beat The Rock a number of times, and then obviously he won that triple threat that included Triple H and Stone Cold Steve Austin. And Mankind would just be a great wrestler. He had that Hell in a Cell match against Taker at King of the Ring '98, and eventually he had that retirement match with Triple H in the Hell in a Cell at No Way Out 2000, and then eventually he became he main evented WrestleMania with The Rock and Triple H and himself in like a fatal four-way match, and then eventually Mankind went on to get inducted into the Hall of Fame, and Mick Foley does dick spots, so whatever. And China, unfortunately, the WWE kind of erased her from the company. They didn't really reference her much because obviously there was real heat between Triple H and China after the whole Stephanie McMahon situation. So then eventually when she passed away last year, she went on to doing some appearances in TNA and stuff. But China unfortunately didn't really get to go in the Hall of Fame as herself, and it kind of sucked to be China. And then Taker went on to become a huge a huger legend than he already was. He had that undefeated streak at WrestleMania that lasted up until WrestleMania 30. He went on to be 21-0, but then obviously at 30 he was 21-1, and then he would wrestle for a few more years, and then he had his final match at WrestleMania 32. So that was that, and that was about it for everybody where they went. So overall, this match made two or even more future stars, and this obviously was slowly having WWF enter the Attitude Era. This definitely felt like it was kind of leading up to that because this match definitely was different than any other match that was on the show, and you could definitely slowly see that this was leading to the Attitude Era. This was WWF was starting to kind of make some changes. They were slowly doing it. This show was a great example of it, but obviously it had the formation of DX on this show, so whatever. Overall, really good match though. Okay, so now I'm going to give you guys my star ratings and overall thoughts on this show. So let me remember all the matches. We have the Country Whipping match. I'll probably give that match 2 stars. It was just really an average match, but it was all right. For the I don't even remember his name. Just get the match code. I thought it was Tony Williams versus I think it was Scott Padinsky. I'll put his name in the description box. I'll probably give that match a star and 3/4. I'm not really gonna fault the wrestlers for that. I'll be nice. But it was just mainly focused on Brian Pillman changing into a dress. For the Brian Pillman Flash Funk match, I'll probably give that a star and a half. It was a pretty bland match. And then for the tag team match, I'll probably give that match 3 stars. I thought that was a good solid tag team match. And then for the Farouk versus Chains match, I'll give that match also 2 stars. It was also just kind of there. But it also does have that moment where the Rocky Maivia lays out Farouk with the not Farouk, Change with the rock bottom, so it has that moment in there. And then for the main event between Shawn Michaels and Mankind, probably 3.5 stars. That was a really good match. Really wish they would have just made that match a no disqualification match because I definitely think they could have done a lot more. And then obviously for my overall thoughts on this show, overall, I would say that this was a pretty weak show. Obviously, this was the WWF still not producing the greatest content. You had a lot of weird stuff, but they had some decent stuff on the show. Really, the only thing worth seeing the show for is the formation of D-Generation X historically. I think they did a really good job building up to that throughout the night, having Shawn Michaels' opening promo, and then obviously building up to that throughout this series of events backstage. And then you obviously have the match between Mankind and Michaels, but it has other good stuff. It has that Dude Love interview that's pretty decent. It has the stuff with the Brett the Hitman on the Patriot that isn't too bad. But yeah, it has a lot of bad matches on this show. Has a lot of goofy stuff, like the whole stuff with Brian Pillman and stuff. So not the best show. If I had to rate it, I'd probably rate it a 4 out of 10. It's just not that good of a show. But you can definitely see that the WWF was slowly getting better. They were slowly moving into the Attitude Era, and this was the slow stages of it. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. All right, so that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you guys for watching this video. I will be back next week to do this again. I actually enjoy doing this, and I'll do the next episode. So please make sure that you leave a comment. Let me know what you thought of this series. Make sure you like, comment, and share this video so that way people will watch it. Make sure you subscribe to this channel for more content and click on the bell so that way every time you upload a video on this channel, you guys will get the notification for it. And make sure you do the same for my CM Brothers and Owen the Talking Nitty YouTube channels. Make sure you subscribe to those channels and click on the bell on those channels so that way every time you upload a video, you guys will get a notification for it. And that's pretty much it, guys. Talk to you later.